You finally start sleeping again. You finally stop checking your phone. You finally go an entire day without thinking about them. And then right on time, your screen lights up. Hey, I've been thinking about you. I miss you. I'm sorry. Can we talk for 5 minutes? And the scary part isn't the message. The scary part is what happens inside your body. Your stomach drops, your heart races, your brain starts negotiating. Because one tiny notification just pulled you back toward a life you fought to escape. Now listen carefully. If they came back the moment you started healing, it wasn't coincidence. It wasn't love. It wasn't a sign from the universe. It was the hoovering phase, the psychological vacuum effect where a narcissistic or emotionally abusive person tries to suck you back into the same cycle. Source. And today I'm going to show you why it happens specifically when you start healing, how your nervous system gets targeted, and why Carl Jung's concept of the shadow explains the panic behind the comeback. Quick engagement check because this matters. If you've ever received that "I miss you" text after you went quiet, type "I got the text" in the comments. No details, no story, just that line. Because numbing the pattern out loud breaks the spell. Before we go deeper, I need you to hear this. This video isn't about making you hate them. This video is about making you free. Because the opposite of hoovering isn't arguing. The opposite of hoovering is clarity. And clarity is what narcissistic dynamics can't survive. Hoovering is exactly what it sounds like a Hoover vacuum cleaner. It's contact designed to pull you back into orbit. And it can show up days, months, or even years later, often when they feel lonely, threatened, or when they're not getting enough attention elsewhere. Source. But here's the upgrade most people miss. Hoovering isn't always aggressive. Sometimes it's soft, romantic, mature, spiritual, even healing-coded. It can sound like, "I realized what I did. I'm in therapy. I've changed. I finally understand you." And that's why it works, because it aims at your most beautiful trait. Your capacity to hope. And hope in the wrong hands becomes a leash. Let me ask you a question. Answer honestly in the comments. When they return, what hits you harder? Is it the love or the relief? Because for most survivors, it's relief. Relief that the silence broke. Relief that you're seen again. Relief that the tension is gone. And that relief is not proof of love. It's proof of conditioning. If you've ever said, "I know they're bad for me, but why do I still miss them?" You're not crazy. You're experiencing the aftereffects of a trauma bond, a bond formed when the same person becomes both the source of pain and the source of comfort. Psych Central explains trauma bonding as a connection that can defy logic and becomes hard to break, especially when there's a power imbalance and a cycle of good and bad treatment. Source. Now add the second ingredient, intermittent reinforcement. That's the hot and cold pattern, cruelty mixed with random affection. And this is where the brain gets trapped, because unpredictable rewards create the strongest attachment. Psych Central compares it to a gambler at a slot machine. You keep pulling because maybe this time you'll get the version you crave. Source. So when they hoover, when they reappear with sweetness, your brain doesn't interpret it as danger. It interprets it as the reward finally returning. That's why hoovering can feel like a hit of calm, even if your life with them was chaos. And that's why your healing is the exact moment they strike. If your mind is saying, "But what if they really changed?" Pause for 1 second. Not to judge yourself. To protect yourself. Because that question, "what if they changed?" is the doorway back into the loop. And narcissistic dynamics love doorways. Healing creates 3 things that threaten the narcissistic dynamic. You become less reactive. You become less reachable. You become less controllable. You stop feeding them your emotional energy, your attention, your chasing, your explaining, your guilt. And the Hoover attempt is a test. Not a love letter. A test. A simple internal question they're asking is, do I still have access? Because access is the currency. This is why psychology today emphasizes that hoovering is not about genuine reconnection. It's manipulation aimed at regaining control. Source. And that's also why it often happens exactly when you look like you're moving on. Carl Jung's work becomes relevant because Jung understood something most people don't. People don't just fear losing relationships. They fear confronting what the relationship was protecting them from. Jung described the shadow as the thing a person has no wish to be, and warned that the more it's ignored, the more it can erupt. Source. So here's the Jungian translation of hoovering. When you heal, you stop carrying their shadow for them. You stop being the container for their shame. You stop being the punching bag for their self-hatred. You stop being the mirror that reflects them as powerful. And the moment you step out of that role, the shadow moves back toward them. That's when they reach out. Not because they suddenly developed empathy, but because they're trying to restore the old system where you absorb what they can't face. This also ties to Jung's idea of projection. What we can't accept in ourselves, we tend to see in others. The Jungian shadow frameworks commonly describe this reject then project pattern. Source. So if you were always labeled selfish, cold, crazy, too sensitive, the problem, ask yourself, was that a description of you? Or a shadow they couldn't hold? Hear how the trap resets. They reappear softly. Your nervous system floods. You respond just to be polite. Then they pull you into a conversation. Then into emotion. Then into explaining. Then into defending. Then into the past. And suddenly you're not healing anymore. You're participating in a cycle. And the worst part is you feel like it's your fault because you chose to reply. But if you were conditioned through intermittent reinforcement, the urge to respond isn't weakness. It's biology meeting psychology. Hoovering isn't isolated, it's part of a repeating ecosystem. During discard, many people experience escalation, blame shifting, gaslighting, emotional coldness, and sometimes smear behavior. Simply, psychology describes discard as a phase that can include heightened manipulation and even smear campaigns. Source. Smear campaigns serve a purpose. They keep you destabilized and reactive. Psychology Today's smear campaign guidance highlights a core survival rule: don't engage, because engaging can escalate the attack and keep you trapped in their orbit. Source. And notice the connection. Smear gets you to react. Hoover gets you to reconnect. Both restore access. Same goal, different costume. Let's make this extremely practical. In my experience, Hoovers often hit when one of these healing signals becomes visible. When you go silent and stop feeding the cycle. When you look happier, lighter, more independent. When you set a boundary and actually keep it. When you stop arguing and start detaching. When your life begins to expand, friends, goals, purpose, and they feel you slipping away. And here's your comment prompt. Which one triggered your Hoover? Write just one phrase: silence, boundary, new life, happy, or detached. That comment isn't for them. It's for the next person reading who thinks, why did they come back now? A lot of people relapse because they think the Hoover is closure. It's finally my chance to explain. It's finally my chance to make them understand. It's finally my chance to be seen. But closure is not something you negotiate with a person who benefited from your confusion. Psychology Today notes that you may never get true closure and that hoovering can bank on keeping access open. Source. So the hailing move is this. Stop asking, will they understand? Start asking, what does contact cost me? Because contact always has a price. Here is the simplest test for hoovering. Ask yourself one sentence. Is this message about accountability or about access? Accountability looks like consistency, respect for boundaries, no pressure, no urgency, no guilt, no manipulation. Access looks like speed, emotion, crisis, nostalgia, bait. Just one talk, you owe me, I'm suffering, you're cruel. If it's access, it's hoovering. Even if it's wrapped in tears. Resisting hoovering isn't about becoming cold. It's about becoming clear. Psychology today suggests protective actions like limiting contact, blocking where possible, seeking support, and grounding yourself in reality rather than fantasy. Source. And if smear is active, the don't engage principle becomes survival. Source. So the goal is not to win an argument. The goal is to exit the arena. Because the arena is where they're powerful. Your silence is not weakness. Your silence is your nervous system reclaiming itself. Now let's go deeper, because this is the upgraded healing angle. When you resist a Hoover, you're not only resisting a person. You're resisting the part of you that was trained to confuse intensity with love. You're resisting the part of you that was trained to chase crumbs. You're resisting the part of you that learned to earn safety through over-explaining. Jung believed wholeness requires bringing unconscious material into consciousness, making the darkness conscious instead of pretending it isn't there. Source. So every time you don't respond, you're doing shadow work too. You're saying, I can feel the pull without obeying it. I can miss them without returning. I can grieve without reopening the door. That is power. Quiet power. The kind they can't manipulate. If you remember one line from this entire video, let it be this. The comeback is not romance, it's a controlled check. And your healing is the reason it happens. If this video put language to what you've lived through, subscribe, because the next video is about what happens when you refuse the Hoover, the escalation patterns, the reverse Hoover tactics, and how to protect your peace without getting pulled into explaining yourself. And I want one final comment from you, because this community matters. What was the exact line they used to come back? Type the line word for word so other people can recognize it when it appears on their screen. And if you're in that fragile phase right now, where one message could pull you back, read the comments before you reply. Because sometimes the thing that saves you is realizing you're not the only one. Jung warned that what stays unconscious drives your life like fate. Source. Hoovering is an attempt to drag you back into unconsciousness. Back into reaction. Back into confusion. Back into the version of you that could be controlled. But you're not that person anymore. You're healing. And if they came back when you started healing, that's not proof you're meant to return. That's proof you're finally becoming